population, and welcome to Off the Rack. I'm Sal.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Tiffany.
As you can see, we have some leftovers from Connecticut, our trip up north to the Connecticut Convention Center for that amazing show. Hopefully you'll see some footage for that coming up in the next couple of days. But for now, let's jump into the first issue of the inaugural series of Invader Zim #1, of course brought to you from Oni Press by Jhonen Vasquez and Eric Trueheart, with art by Aaron Alexovich and Megan Lawton.
The art looks exactly the same as it did in the show, which means that they're doing a great job of imitating what Jhonen Vasquez did with Invader Zim.
Yes, that's true. If you're not familiar with the show, of course, just go on YouTube and watch them all. I'm sure they're there. But if not, it's a show that was on Nickelodeon about 15 years ago. No, I think it was only 1999. So yeah.
15 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time. And so we're getting right back into it. And it makes a self-referential joke about it, about how there's a long time that was between the show and the comic, but cementing it in the continuity of the show. If you watch the show, this is a welcome return to the character and to the universe. If you're not familiar with the show, like some of us here, maybe it might have been a little bit more alienating, no pun intended, but we'll find out. So, what were our initial thoughts of Invader Zim #1?
I don't know if Invader Zim works as a comic. It's a little disturbing at times.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, the show definitely went into places that we were not expecting it to go. There were gross characters, gross scenes, definitely things that, urge you to be like, ugh! That said, the characters are very much how they were. It felt very natural for them to be in that situation, and their interactions were exactly as I remember them being. But, again, I'm not entirely sure that Invader Zim works as a comic. One of the great things about the show was the fast-paced action, the dialogue between the scenes, and how the actual voice actors emoted the characters throughout the plot. That's missing here, and they make up for a little bit of it, but I don't know, it felt a little lacking for me.
I have no connection to these characters. Like, coming into this book, I was like, okay, cool? Question mark? I don't know. I most of the time that I spent, while I was reading it, was wondering what you guys were going to think about it, because I was like, what's going on with this. But, as a first-time reader of this, I mean, here's the thing. If you even have a little bit of interest in this, it might be up your alley. You know what I mean? As an introductory book, it did a pretty good job of, laying the land. I felt like that silly little thing right in the beginning with, the superfan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of set up some of the world for you, enough that you could get a feel for it, and, even the first issue itself delved, I guess, a little bit into the characters, but maybe a little bit more than people who already knew who they were wanted. But, for me, I was like, oh, okay, I get, a feel for them, but, it just comes down to it wasn't my taste, so it doesn't mean it's not a good book, it's just not for me.
I thought it was funny at times. It was less risque than I was expecting it to be. The show, of course, it was on Nickelodeon. It was by a guy who did a book called Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. His style is very dark and violent, but with humor, if I could say that. So with the cartoon show, you had a lot more restrictions, and even with those in mind, you could see where Vasquez was trying to go with it, and where Nickelodeon would be like, okay, now let's take a hard turn right. There's never any sentimentality in the show, so obviously you wouldn't expect any in the comic. That said, I thought with Oni Press doing the book, and with Vasquez on writing duties, we kind of expected it to be this is the Zim that I always wanted to do, where everyone is just violent and miserable and ugly. And while that's true, it's in no way different from the cartoon show.
No.
The only thing you're missing, like Ben said, is the voice actors. And that really was 50% of the show. The writing is as good as it ever was because it was written by the same effing people who wrote the cartoon show.
I will say it felt a little rusty.
Yeah. I mean, they had clearly, that neither of these writers thought about this book before they were pitched it. They haven't been pitching Zim for 15 years. They moved on. And then Oni's like, you want to do a Zim book? I bet Hot Topic could carry it. And, and even then, by the way, we can probably, we don't even have to do the writing and the art. We're just kind of talking about the book in general, and that's how we'll do it this episode. But for me, I feel like there was a lot of trueness to the book that rang true to the cartoon, and didn't have the hot topification that I was expecting. Gur was not the central focus of the book.
Nope.
Nor was it indicated that he will be. Despite the fact that if you go to Hot Topic and you find any Zim merchandise, it's all Gur. Invader Zim is incidental.
Yeah, it's just a platform for Gur to be the center.
Exactly. And Gur works as a foil for the character because Zim is, of course, deadly serious about his ridiculousness, and Gur is deadly ridiculous in the face of Zim's seriousness, and so it creates humor, or at least you would hope. And in this, the foils all work, and they didn't have to acknowledge the time gap, but I find it interesting they did. But even then, I was like, okay.
You know what? There was also a whole lot of text.
Yes,
this
a
book
lot
had
of talking.
So much talking.
Well, I think that they really got caught up in having to reacquaint you with the universe.
Yeah.
Because I think that they probably needed to be reacquainted with the universe more than fans.
Well, not only that, but I mean, if they're used to writing this storyline as a script, then they would be used to being like, no, but it's okay to have a lot of talking because, someone is going to speak it as opposed to read it.
Exactly.
So this could be a transitionary period for them.
Yeah, it could get deeper or it could get canceled. We don't know.
And again, because I don't know much about the TV show other than it existed.
Yep.
And you guys dug it.
That's literally it. It existed and people dug it.
Yeah.
There's nothing more you really say about Invader Zim.
And, one of the kids in the hall
genre.
played a character.
Yeah.
In it. But my understanding of it, most of it took place on Earth.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting, if I was correct in that this story is going to be
more interstellar.
Going into space.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that might be intentionally done, because they're like, well, now we're in a new age of Zim, and we're going to take this comic book and we're going to put it somewhere else.
If you like Zim, this is just a welcome return. But,
you'll like.
But if you watched it 15 years ago, like many of us, you might have gotten over it already. That's kind of my feeling. I don't need this book. I'm not finally. If I'd found, but of course, maybe people are just getting into Zim. That's the thing about cult classics, is that they always come around.
Yeah, and the fact that, we mentioned with Hot Topic, there are people who have Gur-based items and may not even know what it is.
Yeah.
Or, have ever watched the show even. But this is an opportunity for them to...
Yeah, to delve into the universe.
Yeah, into something new that might go in a direction that no one expects, because you were talking about earlier with the writing, about how you thought it was going to be darker.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I thought it was a little bit more so, and I assumed that I took that as a sense of because Nickelodeon doesn't have any say anymore.
Yeah.
But maybe they're just going to transition, and going into deep space, you're going to see things that could have never been on.
Yeah, it could be that they were they're getting us comfortable, and then they'll start messing with expectations. You'd have to see 3-4 issues down the line.
Yeah.
And it might be also a very different format for the comic. Like we said, it was very text-heavy, this issue, because the show used to have a lot of talking back and forth.
Yeah.
And a lot of the show was the voice actors, mixed with the actual content and the plot. Now, this way, they might be taking it into a darker place so that it doesn't have to be so much of the dialogue.
Right.
And it's more about the action that happens. So
yeah.
Do you guys realize that people who never saw the show are going to read this book? Kind of like me, because I only kind of recognized some of how the voice actors should be read, or how
they're never gonna know.
They'll be reading them with completely different voices.
Yeah, which I think will be kind of weird, because I only read it in their voices, and it only works with their voice actors. So
I mean, I only knew two of one.
That's all you need: Zim and Dib. I mean,
I couldn't remember what Dib's voice sounded like.
It's just a kid.
That's
the funny thing. For me, that's for just off topic a little bit, but for me, Zim is an allegory for two weird kids in school. I like to imagine that in another version of Zim,
they'd be friends.
That Invader Zim is the game that Zim and Dib are playing. That they're both weird children in school, and that there are no aliens.
Oh.
But they're both just weird kids who have too much in common. And so they're butting heads. That's how I always saw Zim.
Oh, okay.
It's just two outcasts who are friends, but they don't even know it. And so all the fantastic is just part of it. It's very Calvin and Hobbes for me. I don't think that's true, but I think that's a fan theory that I subscribe to. For me, I'm this is an allegory for two weird kids who don't know their friends. That's where I found the heart in Zim. It's hard to find it though, because no one is rewarded for being good in this universe. So there you go, guys. Invaders are #1. I say check it out if you have any passing interest in Zim, and you can pick it up online or in comic book stores. Don't buy it at Hot Topic.
No.
We'll see you guys next time. I'm Sal.
I'm Ben.
I'm Tiffany.
Doom. That's it.
Yep.